Brother, could I ask you a few questions?
Yeah. You Muslim?
No, I'm not. Thank you. So first
You're
of
Christian?
all, no.
Atheist? Agnostic?
No. Okay, I'll tell you. So I mean, I actually almost converted to Islam.
Okay.
Almost when I was like 14, 15. Zakir Naik? Yeah. He almost got me.
Is that because he said, brother, I have a question?
No, it's because he came up with this unifying theory. Because I was brought up in an Indian household, so my parents are Hindu, but my mum's not anymore, and that's probably my fault. But he, at that point, he was talking about the 10 avatars of Vishnu, right? And he was saying that he came with a unifying theory for obviously the Abrahamic religions, Islam being the final, message, and then also for even the Eastern tradition, saying that he was saying, obviously with the 124,000 prophets, but we don't know their names, and he was saying most likely Buddha was a prophet, most likely Krishna was a prophet, but obviously Hinduism misinterpreted their message, and he was saying that he believes that Kalki, the last messenger or the last avatar of Vishnu, is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Which, in my mind, it blew my mind, because obviously he then started quoting the Vedas, and as you know, he's a very knowledgeable man. He knows Sanskrit pretty well, and he was basically saying that, the mother of the Prophet Muhammad's name is Amina, the father's name is Abdullah, and Kalki's mother and father's name in Sanskrit translate to the, Arabic names. And as a child, that blew my mind. It was like, wow, it seemed like the unifying sort of theory. But then I kind of fell out of Hinduism for my own reasons, and then I became a hardcore atheist for some amount of time, and then I realized that doesn't make any sense either. It doesn't really explain anything. And then I went into this whole mode of just reading. I read the Quran multiple times, and then I also read it in order. I found a version that was in order of the Revelations, and then I read say Bukhari, say Muslim, and then I read some of the Shia documents as well, and I read the Bible, the Gita, the Dhammapada. Because my idea at that time was, all I really care about is truth, genuinely. I still to this day, all I actually care about is truth. I don't actually care about anything else, to be honest. It's the only thing that actually drives my life. And at that point, I was convinced that...
Do you believe in objective truth?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I do. But what that is, we can talk about, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I won't be arrogant to claim that I know exactly what it is, because I think that objective truth, just as Surah Ikhlas says, is completely unique. It's not possible to talk about it with words, right? But we can maybe hint towards it, but we can't actually talk about it, right? So then at that point I was convinced that truth had to be in a religion. Religion had to be true. And then after reading, I came to a point where I don't think that, any of the religions are an absolute truth, but obviously, we can speak about that. But I'm really interested to speak about it from an Islamic perspective, because it's something I spend a lot of time reading into, you know what I mean? I spend a lot of time studying, and I'm not the type of guy that's going to come here and try and disprove it based off a scientific thing to do with metaphysical realities, because science can't make claims, in that realm. So one thing I'm interested in, obviously you were speaking about how evolution isn't necessarily true, but as far as I'm aware from an Islamic perspective, you can say evolution didn't happen, or you can take human exceptionalism or Adamic exceptionalism, right? So there's scope for evolution, right?
So here's the thing, when it comes to evolution, some people make it the be-all and end-all of their belief in God or not.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
So the people that do that, or the people that are getting involved in evolution from an academic perspective, want to know if that by itself is compatible with Islam or not. That's a discussion.
Yeah.
But the discussion of God and then of evolution disproving God, that's a different conversation.
I completely agree.
That's the conversation I was having with him.
And
that's the distinction that I make about a mechanism and a creator of a mechanism.
For sure.
So I say that evolution itself is not in a position to disprove God.
Yes.
However, if you want to know about evolution, then that's a secondary conversation, but that wouldn't disprove a God.
It wouldn't disprove God, but if someone believed that a religion claimed that evolution wasn't true, then it would disprove that claim, right? And I know maybe you're not making that claim, but I think obviously a lot of Muslims, do make that claim, and a lot of Muslims have been driven out because they think that that Islam and evolution aren't compatible, right? And, I don't know what you think, but I know that Islamic, nowadays, there's Islamic room for evolution, obviously, there's room for evolution in terms of human exceptionalism, Adamic exceptionalism.
So
and
what
that
we
sort
say
of
is
way.
that evolution is the best naturalistic theory that there is.
Yes, for sure.
Based upon the methodological naturalism that we mentioned, which is the assumption that we only take the physical or the material, that when you do that, then of course, based upon that, the best naturalistic explanation is evolution. But what we're saying is that it's not fair to exclude the metaphysical.
I agree.
And that's what we're saying. So Adamic exceptionalism is a very good discussion to be had. And of course that can be discussed and that can be brought apart. But I try to put that in one kind of pot, and I say, look, before we even get to that, rather than us wasting too much time on that, why don't we accept or reject if there is a possibility of a creator or not? Solely based upon philosophical and irrational reasons.
For sure.
So that's where I tend to take the argument. Because with evolution, there's a lot of people that are brilliant there.
It gets too complicated.
No. That conversation exists, but for me, it's not as pressing as talking about God, because I believe that you can still be a believer and you can still have conversations about evolution. And if tomorrow you were to pass away or whatnot, you'll die as a believer, somebody that's, a believer, but you're still a student learning about evolution and, its accuracies and its assumptions. Because it takes on a lot of assumptions, and a lot of people are pushing it forward like a religion. In fact, one of the guys that's very well known in the field, Michael Roos, who's passed away recently, he wrote a book called Darwinian A Religion. So that's how some people do take it. So that conversation can go into, and
that's unscientific, though. I would say personally, I don't think it's scientific to make a religion out of evolution. You know what I mean? But I agree. I think evolution is a topic which you can get very carried away and not reach any ends. But what I would
do you
say
believe in a necessary existence?
I think it makes sense that there is an independent variable. Yes, for sure. But one thing I'd just like to say about the evolution thing is that I think that consciousness is not explained by any sort of, scientific endeavor. But I do think that the biology, as in the biology of a human being, I do think that is explained by naturalistic means, But I wouldn't say the same about consciousness. I do think those are two separate topics, you know what I mean? Because we do have vestigial organs, we do have things that aren't really, that you would look at, and it's very clear the evidence of a naturalistic ladder which the human beings seem to be at the top of. But I wouldn't say that explains human consciousness and human free will and, that sort of stuff.
But even that,
you get what I'm saying?
Even that ladder, that's why I'm saying evolution itself is like a Pandora's box. That even now, if we were to say that, because you mentioned it in passing that there is a ladder.
For sure.
But that ladder, is it gradual like Darwin wanted it to be, or is it punctuated as Darwin said it should not be?
It's both, I think. It's both. It's gradual and punctuated.
And based upon things like the Cambrian explosion, and we know 66% of species that have come from there, that's a big problem when it comes to the Darwinian explanation. And that's where people do now need to give explanations that, okay, now this does disprove Darwin's notion of gradualism, and there are disproving like vestigial organs. Like people will claim vagus nerve is a vestigial organ, or the coccyx bone is a vestigial organ, but you do know that there are arguments to say the
they
opposing
have their own
well.
function.
Do you see?
I know, but they have reduced function, right? As in, like, the appendix does have a function. But it's
you see?
But but as in, like, for other animals, the appendix function completely differently. For humans, it's got a far more reduced function in that lens,
of, right?
That is like
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. When I was doing A-level, they very proudly labeled a significant amount of DNA as junk DNA.
The introns.
They just called it junk DNA.
Introns.
However, now we know that junk DNA isn't necessarily junk, it switches on and off genes. Now with knowledge of epigenetics, we know so much more about that junk aspect of DNA.
Even during A-levels, I think introns were seen as something that protected the DNA from mutations, because if 99% of it is junk, it means that if a mutation was to happen, it's most likely to happen in a junk area, so it wouldn't affect you. So it does have a function. I wouldn't claim...
But you're thinking at a very higher level.
Sure.
But when it comes to the textbooks of students, that Pluto was still in there as a planet. But we know, obviously, technically speaking, it's a dwarf planet and it's
Yeah.
not included within that classification.
Yeah, but those are just semantics, right? You know what I mean?
Whatever the case may be,
yeah.
but my point is that induction is an assumption that is granted to science and people try to brush over it.
Sure.
And induction should not be granted to science as...
You mean an unexplained induction?
For induction in the sense that if today copper is conducting electricity, what is to say that copper will conduct electricity tomorrow?
Okay, yeah.
If you say, oh, it's based upon the past, that's not good enough.
But it's based upon the physical understanding, no, of the molecules.
Exactly, but that's not evidence. That's not scientific evidence.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
So are you defining scientific evidence as something that's observable and measurable in a lab?
That's how people generally describe science, because when it comes to proving something happening tomorrow, science can't prove it's going to happen tomorrow without resulting in circular reasoning. Oh, it's going to happen tomorrow because it's happened in the past. Why did it? Why are we taking that? Oh, because it's happened in the past based upon our experience. Do you see?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, like, that in itself it's a Pandora's box. But if we put that on ice and we come back to the independent existence that you've said.
Sure.
Let's look at a few criteria.
Okay, do you mind if I say one more thing about that?
Sure.
I agree, like the scientific method is that sort of thing, but one thing I just like to leave you with in a way is that mathematics, I think, is an absolute truth in a way where it's a language and it describes the universe, right? So time flows differently in different parts of the universe. The International Space Station that's above the Earth, time actually flows differently there. But the way how they can sync the times is through maths, right? So it absolutely works, but you can't measure that in a lab. Right, so I'm just saying that there are things, in fact, most of science, most of mathematics, that work absolutely, but you cannot measure them in a lab. You know?
Very good. So
would you say that's
we're on the same page with that.
Sure.
Like maths can't be proven, the logical method can't be proven.
No, it can't be proven in a lab. The mathematics is the proof of the maths.
So
right?
it would be.
I would say it's proof. It's a different type of epistemology.
Exactly. So let me be more clearer. That when it comes to empirical proof or solely physical proof, it doesn't fulfill that criteria. But if you are more generous and you say, I take abduction as well, which is the inference to the best explanation, that's what we say as well. We say that is a form of scientific inquiry as well.
Sure.
So the fact that you accept an independent existence, would you say that independent existence is one?
Yes. I think, the definition of pseudo class, I actually don't have a problem with it, to be honest.
And that's our definition of God.
Yes, but then, yes. And so that's the thing, right? So obviously, when it was explained in that manner to me, I was very much on board. But then, when I looked into things further, I mean, like, I've heard recently that I'm interested in your opinion as well, like, most Muslim men who are giving dawah and, like, scholars, they say that the scientific miracles are no longer applicable anymore. As in, like, I believe with Ali Dawah, he was saying that you shouldn't use the scientific miracles anymore because most of them have been disproven. Not that they've been disproven in terms of the Quran's been disproven, but as in they weren't talking about the science in the first place. They were talking about other things. Like with the rivers mixing, it wasn't talking about the oceans mixing. Like the picture that people commonly pick of the brown water and the clear water. It wasn't talking about. It's talking about a landmass in between the two. Do you know what I mean? So the scientific things are no longer.
When it comes to the scientific aspects that people bring, a lot of people misunderstand that situation.
Yeah.
Because I was there when it was actually being discussed even amongst IERA, and they were the first people to kind of formulate this and put it out there. And that all that is saying is what we've agreed on in the conversation already, which is that science is not something set in stone. Science will change based upon new observations.
Depending upon the science. If it's maths, it won't change. If it's an observation like with ducks, like all ducks are blue, then it can change if you see a different color block.
But maths isn't science though, right?
It is. It is science.
It's something that's used by science. It's not science itself. It's a different.
It's
mode.
a science. You have a universe. You have maths. From maths comes physics. From physics comes chemistry. From chemistry comes biology. From biology comes psychology and the social sciences.
So maths is a tool that is accepted axiomatically. It's not science per se. If we take the definition of science to mean observing things, then extrapolating, then hypothesizing, making a theory.
But maths is as close to truth as we will get in a physical world.
Just so we're on the same page, define maths according to your understanding.
So I would define...
define science.
Science, I would It depends what sort of definition you want to use, but I would say if we
Your
talk about
definition
yeah,
of
so
this
I'd say if we.
conversation.
So for me, science is a method of knowing. It's a method of reaching gnosis, right? It starts off with I don't know, employs a variety of methods to reach an explanation. But then obviously you have the philosophy of science, and you have different tools to reach that. You have a lab, you have a microscope, but that can only explain a certain amount of things. And the microscope is flawed in a way where it can only see what it can see, and it can't see what it can't see. But the thing about maths and physics is the moment you have a mathematical equation that makes sense, you can make a solid claim that cannot be disproven. You know, so whether that's about black holes, that was first a mathematical equation. No one's seen a black hole. No one had any idea about a black hole. But then
that was observations.
The observation affirmed the mathematics.
There you go.
But the mathematics was already proven. You can't disprove the mathematics.
But I'll give you an example.
Seeing it is just an addition.
I'll give you an example. Redshift, yeah?
Yeah.
Redshift and microwave background radiation. These are the two main things and the two integral proofs of the Big Bang Theory.
Sure.
Yeah? And these two are done through observation, not primarily maths. The maths comes
Both.
second.
It comes to
maths comes secondary
yes,
to
I agree.
prove the
I
observation.
agree.
So
with that example.
So bearing that in mind now, that when it comes to the observations and our understanding of science today, for example, even Big Bang, even evolution, tomorrow it can change based upon our observations, correct?
How would it? Yeah, but what would it change to?
It will based upon it could change to another theory that is yet undiscovered.
Sure.
Yeah. For example, at the time of say steady state theory.
Yeah.
There was no kind of understanding of Einstein's understanding of the universe, of there being a space-time fabric, that the fabric of space-time. We took Newton's understanding of gravity. Yeah. So just because something is unknown doesn't mean that we now have to concede that things are set in stone, as it were. Yeah.
Sure.
So we know science by any definition you look at, whether it's the Cambridge definition, Oxford definition, science by its definition has to and must change.
Yes, for
it's
sure.
not written in stone.
It doesn't take
Based- but-
totally, does it? It's a continuum, whether it's science is a
Not
continuum.
necessarily.
It is. The examples.
I'll tell you why.
examples that Examples that you have given, from Newtonian to the laws of Einstein, now to quantum gravity. It's
a continuous process.
It's not like
According
one
to
day-
who said it's a continuum?
I'm telling you it's a continuum.
I don't care about what you're saying.
You take the laws
Tell
of
me
science-
somebody-
You take
Which
the,
scientist says it's a
You
continuum?
take the Newtonian.
Which scientist?
You take all of them. You take the
Now, because I asked you a name, I'll give you a name. Thomas Kuhn. Yeah? You know Thomas Kuhn, right?
He's a philosopher of
One
science.
second. One second. Listen. Thomas Kuhn came up with something that, again, scientists accept
It's a
today.
paradigm.
He's
Yes,
exactly
but he's not a
paradigm
scientist.
shifts.
Thomas Kuhn was a philosopher of science.
And
He
science
wasn't
is
a real-
predicated on
he-
philosophy of
He
science
he wasn't
anyway.
a true scientist.
Science was once
But I'll
upon
give
a
you
time
some
philosophy
names.
of
I'll give you
science.
some names. So
Was
Newtonian,
science? Well, listen to me.
Newtonian
Was
physics
science once
led to
was
Einstein.
science once upon a time called the philosophy of science?
Yes, of course it was.
That's my point.
I mean,
Things have
to be
changed.
honest, I think we're going around in circles here with the
I'll
with the
speak to
thing.
you guys. I'll speak to you.
Yeah.
So do you understand
the
this-
independent?
Yeah. So the fact that this is something that's, I don't think there's any difference of opinion about the fact that science can and will change.
Yes, but I mean, I personally think that evolution is true, but I think we'll just go around in circles with that topic, and I don't think Islam excludes it either now at this point in time. Obviously, traditional scholars and the ulama would probably disagree with all of it. But,
But I don't think you paid attention to what I said. I said
go on.
from a naturalistic.
it's the best
Yeah,
explanation.
it's the best and naturalistic
Yeah.
explanation that we have.
But do you think with any-
But when we
Yeah.
look at things like methodological
Sure.
naturalism, underdetermination,
Sure.
and even the fact that there are theories that are yet undiscovered, that of course we don't know to such a degree that even proponents of it that have said that it's fact, we must accept it. Like Richard Dawkins, even he says in The Devil's Chaplain that Darwinian evolution, we have to accept that it will change and can change in the future.
100%. But that's just because he posited a theory back then, and then nowadays, far more research goes into it, and then we have far more discoveries and more refined understanding, of the evolutionary process that Darwin originally laid out.
Bearing this in mind, I'll give you an example.
But it's refining. It's not changing. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not a paradigm shift. It's
doesn't
refining.
mean that the previous theory was wrong.
I'll give you some examples. Yeah, there
Yeah,
are
go for it.
examples of certain things that have completely changed. Yeah, and a couple of those things.
But the things that change, those are not the fundamental claim of random mutation and survival and all of that sort of stuff. But with this topic, I think we're probably going around circles, so we can shift it to the metaphysical sort of
Because look,
reality.
even just the last thing on the evolution thing.
Yeah.
Evolution conflates one which is observational adaptation that's taking place. Yeah, like evolution in a observable sense, we don't have an issue with.
Yeah.
However, when people bring in Darwinian evolution,
Sure.
that's based upon the tree of life
Yeah.
and natural selection.
Yes.
And the tree of life and natural selection requires its own body of truth. And a lot of that is based upon inference, a lot of that is based upon interpretation of certain laws, like, oh, there's similarities in place, therefore
But there's
it's
a
enough
lot-
for us to conclude that X evolved from Y.
Sure.
When we say that just because you've got homology in place,
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
also homoplasy.
But lot of it
and
is-
homoplasy
Fine.
then contradicts that. Do you see?
Fine. Yeah, I see. I see.
So my point is this, that back in the days the Quran said that the sun is in its own orbit as well.
Yeah, swimming in its
Yeah,
orbit, yes.
but we know the established science of that time didn't accept that.
Yes.
So the point that we're saying at this moment in time is that just like you've got the Hubble telescope,
yes.
and now we've got the James Webb telescope that's able to see things
That is
further.
going across the Milky
Yeah,
Way.
then you're going to get another telescope
But-
that can see
yeah, yeah,
even
yeah.
further,
Yeah.
and we're going to have a greater understanding. So what we're saying is don't measure something which is
through a keyhole.
no, something which is divine,
Okay.
that comes
Okay,
from
fine.
God,
Yeah.
with something that is continuously changing.
Sure.
Because science and its yardstick continuously changes.
Yeah.
But revelation will not change.
Okay.
So
well,
that's
yes.
the argument
the
that's made.
difference.
Yeah, that's the argument that's made here.
Yeah.
That don't measure Quran by something which is changing, because the Quran does not change.
Yeah.
Yes, we can have certain interpretation of certain things,
Yeah.
but don't say scientific miracles as if the Quran is being informed by science.
Yeah,
No.
I agree.
Quran is
agree.
informing
I
the
agree.
other things.
But
That's the
yeah. But obviously, the issue was for quite a while, a lot of Muslims
That
were
people did.
claiming too many miracles, from
I
the
understand,
Quran.
I understand.
Yeah, and people from all religions do that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But obviously, would you say that now, like a lot of the things that Muslims were saying that the Quran was describing, would you say that it wasn't describing those things? Like, for example, the mixing of the water, we clove them asunder for that type of stuff. Would you say that
Let me
or
just-
would you say that you can't claim it because you can't?
Let me reiterate the principle,
Go for it,
because
go
I
for it.
gave you a very good principle.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
And the principle is certain interpretations can be made from the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, the Quran mentioned this. It could be that.
Yes.
You can say that about the mixing of waters, about the Big Bang, about other things.
Yeah.
But to say science confirms that interpretation of the Quran, that's wrong.
Okay, fine.
You see?
Fine. I'm willing to. Yeah. The thing is, I accept that. I just know that a lot of people, obviously, that was a huge reason for lots of people converting to Islam. You know what I mean?
I'll give you an example.
But it's not a reason anymore. You know what I mean?
I'll give you an example. A lot of people, like a few weeks ago, I was discussing with a physics professor.
Yeah.
We were talking about Darwin. We were talking about neo-Darwinism.
Sure.
I'm telling you, some of the evidence that he was giving for Darwinian evolution was wrong.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. The moths
Yeah.
sitting on the trees.
Yeah.
That's wrong. It's fabricated.
Yes. Sure.
Yeah, because that's not the behavior of moths.
Yeah.
And we've got Cambridge professors.
They were
telling-
sitting on a church wall.
Yeah, but the
There's a
ones,
church wall.
the ones that are in our books, they say that, oh, it's based upon the smog coming from the pollution. It changes the trees or whatnot, the colors of the trees, and then you've got white and
they
the
make
black.
camouflage, yeah.
Yeah, but again, and even the antibiotics. Yeah. Oh, that's an example of evolution. No, that's an example
It's
of
an example of
change.
mutation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an example of mutation and change over time and variation.
Yeah.
But it's not an example of natural selection.
Sure.
It's not an example of the tree of life.
So do you believe dinosaurs existed?
Yeah, we say that.
Yeah.
According to the inference to the best explanation, yeah, it seems very sensible that dinosaurs
Yeah.
existed. However, when you look at the Apatosaurus,
Yes.
many people went to the to the museum Yeah. Thanks, bro. They went to the museum thinking that this is a real life fossil of a dinosaur. But they realized that based upon the bone walls, it's fabricated. It's one set of bones with another set of bones.
Sure.
That's why I said the inference to the best explanation 100%. Is that yes, we have good evidence to believe that dinosaurs existed.
Yes.
However, we can't say for a fact. For example, I used to love watching dinosaur documentaries. But very recently, it's come to the fore, and I'm sure you know this already, that a lot of people are assuming what the skin of the dinosaurs was
for sure. That's
to
an
a
assumption.
Degree of certainty when scientists cannot say this for certain about the skins of dinosaurs.
But we know they existed. We can't make specific claims about the skin or whether they're full of hair, furry, or that type of stuff.
It's a mechanism.
But then would you have said that humans and dinosaurs existed side by side, or dinosaurs existed and then humans came? Did you get what I mean? I'm trying to understand the timeline of creation.
That's something that, like you said, the more we understand about archaeology, because even that is based upon induction. I'll give you an example, manuscripts. The oldest manuscript of the Quran was actually filed away in a university. However, it was only when it was discovered by chance that we found out, damn, this is an incredible piece of evidence. And it ended up being the oldest manuscript of the Quran, and it's now in the University of Birmingham. So there's a lot of evidence that we have that hasn't been measured yet, that hasn't been graded yet. So what I'm saying is, this is definitely something which is interesting, it's intriguing, it's a science that Muslims are involved with, it's growing, and we don't know at this moment in time, like a lot of good scientists say. But
from a scientific perspective, we have an explanation.
We have a very good explanation as of yet. It could change tomorrow.
Well, when it came to dinosaurs and humans, we're pretty certain in terms of the timeline. I don't think that will change. You don't think? Then that's pretty set in stone. You know what I mean? In terms of the timeline, like for example, some Christians would say the Earth is 3,000 years old.
I'll give you an example. The gentleman, I think they've run off now, but they brought up Newtonian physics. Now you and I both know there's in Urdu we say Asman Zameen ka fark, big difference between the heavens and the earth, between Newtonian physics and quantum mechanics.
Completely different. Completely different.
There's a reason why the word paradigm shift is used. And we know it went from Newtonian physics to Einsteinian physics to quantum mechanics, and we know it can, will, may continue.
But they're synergetic, right? As in they're puzzles of a larger picture, because quantum mechanics explains the quantum world and Newtonian physics explains the laws of motion.
But remember, back in the days, that's not how it was posited. That's a way for us to understand and synergize it now.
Couldn't you say the same thing about Islam, though? In a way where, in those days it was posited in a very different way, and nowadays a lot of people are interpreting it very differently to the way the classical ulama spoke about it, the way the Prophet spoke about it.
One thing I would say about the classical understanding of Quran is, I'm
not just talking about science, by the way.
No problem. But the way the ulama, the people of knowledge, what they say is that when it comes to the scientific verses in the Quran, the scientific verses of the Quran, they can both be interpreted as fitting the scientific theories of the past and of now as well.
But what if some of the scientific theories of the past and today are completely different?
But that's what I'm saying, that the interpretation of the Quran by the Creator is, in His infinite knowledge, He's worded them in such a way that science is not the determining factor for you to believe in God.
There's something I want to talk about, but I don't want to affect anyone's iman or anything, so I'm careful with what I speak about when it comes to with certain things, because there's some things which
We'll come to that, and I'll let you formulate it in your head if you want to say it.
I've got it in my mind. I'm just wary. I don't want to affect anyone's demand, because there are some things which I've read which seem to be very, very clearly not true, right? Now, obviously...
But then those are individual verses that we can look at the exegesis of.
But the thing is, I've looked at them, and that's the thing. I think, after looking at them, they seem to me to be clearly not true.
You don't know Arabic, do you?
I'll be honest, they're clear to me. I have friends who speak Arabic very well, and I've spoken to some people in Scotland who are Islamic as in like they're proficient in Arabic and graduated from different schools in Arabia, and we've spoken about certain things, and that's one of the reasons why like I'd like to speak to someone to understand like how because I'm sure you will have obviously heard the things that I would say, so I'm very interested to hear your how you would respond to it, you know what I mean? Because like genuinely from the bottom of my heart, if I believed Islam was true, and I'm open to truth wherever it is, I would take the Quran as the word of Allah and I would follow it to the end of my life, because for me truth is the only thing that actually matters, you know what I mean?
So let's tick a few boxes.
Yeah, go for it.
So the first box that was ticked by you was that you believe the Islamic definition of God
from Surah Ikhlas, yes, but I disagree with hadith descriptions and understandings of Allah, because obviously through Aqidah there's different. Some people say Allah is everywhere. That doesn't mean he's in the toilet, you know what I mean? I think that's a fairly childish rebuttal. And some people say that Allah is separate to creation, he's about Johnson Fidosa but the throne. And I think that initially when you talk about religion to people,
those things don't distinguish Iman and Kufr. Those both people, the ulama,
I agree. I think they're compatible. Yeah.
The ulama, they say they are within Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and their beliefs are up for discussion and up for debate.
For sure. And that's not what I was talking about with the other thing. I was, with the things I believe are clear. But with this, I mean, a really important question. When you're talking to people about religion who, are questioning, you ask them like, where did you come from? Where are you going? Who is your Lord?
When it comes to Trinity, we make a claim that when it comes to the essence of God should be proven by logic. When I say logic, I mean the three fundamental laws of logic: the law of non-contradiction, the law of identity, and the law of excluded middle. Okay. The Trinity is not aligned with any of these three.
How so?
For example, they believe that the Father is God.
Yes.
They believe the Son is God.
Yes.
Therefore, it should conclude that the Father equals the Son.
Yes, they should.
According to the law of identity.
I agree.
But they believe no.
They believe there are different attributes, but they believe the fundamental essence is the same.
But even bearing in mind the essence of the persons, whatever, you still have to take into account the law of identity.
Yeah.
Because if the Father is God, it's up to you. The is of identity or the is of predicate. You can take whatever thing you want. But you're still saying the Father is God. The Son is God. Therefore, the Father equals the Son.
Yes.
You're saying God is triune.
Yes.
Jesus is God.
Yes.
Therefore, Jesus should be triune.
Yes.
Do you see? So you take syllogisms, Christianity falls. Sure. You take the law of identity, Christianity falls. Then Jesus comes over here. He's 100%. He's 100% man. And 100% God.
100% God. Yeah.
That's a contradiction. How can you be 100% of one thing and 100% of something else?
The thing is, I won't argue about it because I'm not a Christian, but I can. Sure. But do you see why? Do you see why somebody would like find it a little bit problematic that it's difficult to say concretely whether Allah is everywhere, whether He's above our throne? Well, I understand your reasoning, but do you see why somebody would find that an issue when they want to know who their Lord is? Really?
With all due respect.
Yeah.
I feel I've given you a very convincing, very logical answer based upon theology, based upon tafsir, based upon aqidah.
Okay.
I've given you a well-rounded answer. That there are verses in the Quran that can be interpreted one way or another. They do not predicate you going to heaven or hell. They do not change how you worship. For example, an example that comes to mind very quickly is the Seventh Ecumenical Council of Christianity. Deals with the iconoclastic controversy, which is icons. Can you have icons or not? That's the Second Council of Nicaea. The Protestants rejected completely. Completely rejected. It's an ecumenical council, for God's sake. But it's rejected. Now, when it comes to Sunni Muslims, we accept, this scholar, that scholar, this scholar. There may be differences in interpretation and how people have gone along with that. Now, when it comes to the worship of somebody that believes God is everywhere, now they say, based upon this ayah, we have interpreted it this way. Now, ask them further, they say, La adri, I don't know. I don't know. Now, does it inform their worship? No. But when it comes to a Christian, they are bowing in front of an idol.
Sure. That's the
when it comes to a Christian, they are saying, "I am worshiping Jesus." Somebody else is saying, "But Jesus said worship the Father.
Yes, I agree.
So they are worshipping a different God. And if they believe that the Father is divine, and one person, the Son is divine and one person, the Holy Spirit is divine and one person, they have different divine attributes.
Sure. So basically what you're saying is the divine attributes remain the exact same, and from what you're saying, the fundamental things remain the exact same,
that
and the practical aspect too.
I'm saying the essence of God, the interpretation of that, and all of these things that I've mentioned, that's something that we agree upon. How it fleshes out and the consequence of that, that's up for debate. It does not change the Muslim's belief that the Muslim is now worshipping a different God.
Sure.
This Muslim is now worshipping the Prophet. This Muslim is now reading a different Quran. When it comes to Christians, they are worshipping a different God. They are reading a different Bible.
I agree.
There are people in the park that reject the King James Version outright. They reject it. There are Christians in the park that will say, bro, there is not a single manuscript they have of the Bible that dates to the time of Jesus. We have a manuscript dating to the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Sure.
So based upon this, what do you think about preservation compared to the ancient religions?
So I think that the Quran has been very well preserved. I do think
Abdul Karim.
I personally do think that there are some issues with the perfect preservation, but that is too much of a topic to get into. But can I ask you?
Out of interest, what do you think those issues are?
In terms of like the what do you call it? The chain of narration. I think there's some issues with the right at the beginning sort of aspect in terms of the ayats as they were revealed and how that got onto paper. I think there are certain ambiguity there, but I don't think there's any, because at the end of the day, if the Quran is absolutely true, then I would take it as, preserved, right? I wouldn't even argue with it, you know what I mean? But if I find something if I find something which I think is not a metaphysical claim, a physical claim, but I think is incorrect, then obviously I won't believe it's perfectly preserved. Does that make sense? Could I talk about one thing which I think is incorrect? Is that okay? But I'm just a bit conscious of people around. Okay, go on. But just tell me if you think I should stop. But with Isra, with the night journey, right? Obviously, I won't even try and argue about the flying, about al-Barak, because there's no point. Science can't disprove whether it existed or not. So I'm not even going to try and argue with that. But in terms of the cosmological,
you also know that science doesn't accept the metaphysical anyway. So
it doesn't reject it either. I don't think it rejects it.
It does.
There are many scientists that
you're saying science accepts the metaphysical.
No, I'm not saying it accepts it. I'm saying it doesn't reject it, because, like you said, it works via observation. It hasn't observed anything that can disprove the metaphysical, right? So let's say, for example, a mathematician like Roger Penrose, he's fairly certain consciousness isn't computational. That directly is a metaphysical claim. You know what I mean?
But that's a conclusion of said individual. It's not a claim. About the philosophy of science.
Yeah, but when you say science rejects the metaphysical, are you talking
in terms
about
of its
scientists?
methodology? Yeah, in terms of its the scientific method.
If you're talking about what can be seen under a microscope, sure. But if you're talking about
scientific method,
if you're talking about the scientific aspiration, I don't think they do.
Not aspiration. We're talking about the scientific method, because anything that gets measured according to science has to be measured. Push comes to shove according to the scientific method.
Yeah. By the way, I won't even try to apply science to the metaphysical, because you can't measure something non-physical with a physical stick. You know what I mean?
So go ahead.
So that argument's complete. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not even going to try and debate that. I'm talking about if Islam is going to make a claim about the metaphysical, internally it should be logically consistent.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Sure.
As in internally, right? So like let's say from a scientific perspective, you can't say heaven doesn't exist, right? If Islamically heaven makes sense from an internally logical perspective, then you can't disprove that. Scientifically, you have to remain agnostic towards that. So I'm with you on that. So for example, with the night journey, so I'll lay out my argument. So it talks about obviously the Prophet going to heaven, right? Ascending into heaven. in those days in Arabic and even in English language, when you talk about the heavens, you look at the sky and you say the heavens, right? Because the cosmological understanding of the world back then was, I won't even go into the flat earth, but that the sky was a solid object, hence the invisible pillars, and hence things keeping the sky up. So then the Prophet went up on Al-Balaq, but then I heard I believe it was Muhammad Ajab actually, he was saying that how can you say the sky is a solid object, because the Prophet went up, how can he go up if the sky is solid, right? Yeah. But this answer is given in the hadiths. In Sahih Bukhari, it's made very clear that there is a literal door and there were angels there where Jibreel yelled out, open the door, and the guards gave a key to a door to go from this realm to the next realm, right? And my point is that this is inherently, internally, logically inconsistent, because from an Islamic perspective, the sky is solid, right? And as far as Isra goes, the Prophet went through a door. Now, without, I'm just trying to be, honest. I'm not trying to make fun, but there's no door in space. You know what I mean? And the cosmological idea in those days was that there were 7 aspects, and the stars are in one heaven, and you go up, and the things that move through space with a different Arabic name that's given to them, and those are to disrupt the jinns from coming to Earth, to disrupt the angels' prerogative, right? So I think that this is internally, logically inconsistent, and not even with science, just with Islam itself. Do you understand what? Do you understand my argument?
Because I thought I already dealt with that right at the beginning.
Okay, explain.
Yeah, which is the fact that all of this is predicated on the fact of whether God exists or not, whether the Prophet was true in what he said,
sure,
if the Quran is true or not.
Sure.
Because logically it would follow that if God exists, the Quran is true, the Prophet did exist and he was true as well, then it follows what he said and what was written in the Quran would be true as well.
Sure. So you bring in... Okay.
So that's where the crux of the discussion happens, because one thing that I've noticed is we can have long discussions about individual miracles, but getting it cut from the usuli, the
from the beginning, from the principle. Sure.
So is there a God? What's the issues with pertaining to the Quran? What's the issue with regards to the Prophet? Because if we accept all these things, 3 things to be correct, then there's no issue pertaining, because they're dealing with the 7 heavens.
Yes.
Yeah, and science hasn't ventured into the heavens. We don't know what is there.
Well, it's ventured into the ancient definition of heaven, which is, space and the stars.
Definitions.
Yeah, but that's what they meant, right?
No, but that's the thing. If the Prophet is describing something that scientists cannot see, have not seen, then they have to remain agnostic on it.
I agree, but because the Quran has a falsification test, right, in terms of finding the contradiction type thing, and I'm saying that I think that this is a contradiction in terms of it being a door and going into heaven. As in, do you understand what I'm?
Not necessarily, because that door that you're referring to is the 7th heaven. That's where Jibreel alayhi salam couldn't go beyond.
No, but there was a door which he went through in Sahih Bukhari, from this realm to the next. From earth to the first heaven. There was a door there. That's what I'm saying in Sahih Bukhari, which is the Sahih Hadith, right?
So when you say door, are we taking that as a humanistic understanding of what a door is?
So I'm taking it from the Islamic wording in terms of, and I read the Arabic too, by the way. It's talking about and there's a key and the guards to the door as well. And as in, help, I'm asking for your help. You know what I mean? Help me in terms of to explain that in a way where it's described as there's a door and there's angels with a key and they're guards of the door, and then they go through the door after Jibreel calls out. How else can you interpret that if not in that sort of way?
So most of the people, would you accept? The people don't have an adequate understanding or a high-level understanding of the scientific realm.
Which people?
Like the laity. Majority of the people don't have a high-level understanding of science.
Yeah, but I don't think this is that scientific.
Yeah, you accept?
Yeah, but I don't think this is that scientific.
No problem.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example,
Sure.
A lot of what the Quran and the Hadith, it is first-person perspectival. If you listen to hijab, you know this time as well, First-person perspectival, from the perspective of the people. Dhul Qarnayn was going, and it seemed to him that the sun set in muddy waters.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean that the sun was setting in muddy waters.
It means you look in, for sure.
Today, human beings will say, sunset is at this time. Doesn't mean, if somebody says, so long ago, the people were saying sunset, therefore the people were unscientific. No, there is a colloquial understanding. There is a local understanding of what that is. despite people knowing that the sun does not set, people will still continue to use that word sunset. So there is a colloquial understanding,
from first-person perspective.
First-person perspectival understanding. The laity understand when you're going from one thing to the other. You are transitioning from one realm to another. The word door. Now, how ulama, I need to look into what the tafasir and the best of
Ibn Tabari, he also said that the roof is a canopy and said that there are doors. Tabari in the exegesis is very clear about the sky being solid and there being doors to take you from one realm to another. You know what I mean?
The thing is, I'm familiar with Tabari, and a lot of people like to quote Tabari, but Tabari is actually not accessible in English.
Yeah, but so, I can show you the Arabic.
Yes, but can you read the Arabic?
No, but I have friends who have read the Arabic and have told me, and I have listened to Islamic scholars who have said the exact same thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I can show you those. You know what I mean? And like obviously,
because what you need to do is you need to look into Fathul Bari as well to have an understanding of that. But bear in mind. They're tackling from a theological perspective. Yeah. The scientific perspective is up for discussion and up for debate.
Yeah.
However, the concept of there being a door, yes, we accept the wording, the howness of it, wallahu a'lam, we don't know.
But obviously, you wouldn't say the sky is solid, right?
No, of course not.
Yeah. But you know, the classical ulama believed the sky was solid.
The classical ulama gave certain interpretations based upon their understanding of the science of that time.
But they used very specific Arabic words about a canopy and a solid object.
I'll give you an example. The word alaqa. You know,
the blood clot.
You're familiar with Dr. Zakir Naik. And you know that the old definition of alaqa was done one way based upon the people's understanding of it. Then afterwards, when the understanding was changed based upon other things that we knew, we looked towards Arabic to see are there acceptability of other interpretations, and there was a clinging or leech-like substance, a clinging thing, or whatever the case may be.
With that aspect of embryology, there's a direct link between Hippocrates and, I'm sure you know this argument, you know what I mean? The Greek and the Arabic, they're pretty much identical, you know? And it's because back in those days, if you saw that a woman's going to be pregnant and have a child, you'd see that she's been having periods for so often, she's not bleeding anymore, you know? So obviously they believed that the blood congealed, became a clot, and from there a child came. But this was the understanding of the time, and the same thing, forgive me, found its way in the Quran. You know what I mean? And it's the same as it's the exact same as Hippocrates.
No,
but it's the same.
You're making a fundamental mistake here.
Sure.
Because you're taking one meaning of alaqa, and you're saying that because that was present at that time, therefore the Muslims have taken that and then put it there.
I'm not saying that.
But bear in mind, words like this have at least 3+
I'm aware.
definitions.
I'm aware.
And they can be informed and they can be interpreted in certain ways. But the Quran is to be understood in its original language.
Exactly, yes.
And the original language, one needs to see that, is this something that can be interpreted, open to interpretation, or is this something that we have to fix an interpretation because it informs our worship? And things like this that are open to interpretation do not change our understanding of God. They don't have narrative changing implications. I really want you to focus on this word.
Sure.
Narrative changing implications.
Okay. I agree. But I know you're aware that for a very long time these proofs were used. You know what I mean?
Look,
and they converted many people. That was the main reason why a lot of people converted.
The proofs being used doesn't mean that it's the fault. Look, one is a fault of a Muslim, one is the fault of Islam.
I agree.
If you find a contradiction within the Quran, then that's something else. If you find a Muslim using, some Muslims might use the LGBT argument.
They'll say anything, sure.
No, some Muslims genuinely use the LGBT argument. Some Muslims are learning quantum mechanics and they are seeing parallels. Some Muslims are very knowledgeable in psychology. I'm not saying they're wrong. What I'm saying is it could be, it couldn't be. It's their interpretation. But it will not change the fundamental, the narrative, the essence of who God is and what the fundamentals of Islam is.
I agree.
That is something that's accepted within different sects, even if we regard them to be Muslim or not. And that's something that makes us different to say a Hindu, to say a Jew.
Hinduism isn't a religion though, but sure.
Some say it is.
That's
why they say Sanatan Dharma.
Sanatan Dharma is a thing, but
do you see?
But Dharma doesn't necessarily mean religion.
But some say it does.
It means eternal law. which some people translate to as religion.
But some will say that, you know what, no, we are Vishnuvites. Some will say, no, we're Shivites. And they have different interpretation of what they believe the essence of creation
but
to
there's
be.
no book of Hinduism, you know what I mean?
Well, again, some will say that, you know what, Vedas is something that we have no access to, we will never have access to. Some say, no, the Brahmins do have access to it. Some say the Manusmriti, we accept it. Some say, no, we don't accept this particular Manusmriti. Bro, there's so many. Why? Because there's no archetypal text for us to measure what we have today with that. With the Quran, even if you look at stematics and orthography, you have the status Questionus, which is the acceptance of the scholars of orthography and stematics. They accept that there are 4 archetypal texts that the Quran converges to from the time of Uthman. These are non-Muslim scholars, by the way. I've dropped a big bomb, by the way.
No.
I don't think I should be using that word here. You know,
wrong place. But do you see why? As in, like, because you haven't yet told me why. What I thought was a contradiction isn't a contradiction of the.
I've already told you that when it comes to the.
Because it's not about interpretation either. You know what I mean?
No, what I'm saying is that when you look at certain verses, they can be taken as first-person perspectival.
But first-person perspective of, you know, going up and being a door, that makes it even more literal.
Bro, a random person on the ground understands going from one thing to another.
You require a door.
A door is...
It can be a metaphor.
You're going from outside to inside.
Sure.
Again,
But then there's... Do you understand? I'm not trying to be difficult, you know what I mean? Like, you understand that there are keys, there are guards, you know, there are guards to the door. That sort of makes it not metaphorical. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Now, when we're talking about key, what's our understanding of access to different realms?
By the way, you know, if you're saying it's metaphorical, I'm on your page. Are you saying it's metaphorical?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I know some, for example, Shias, they believe the entire thing was metaphorical.
No. Not in terms of Isra wal Miraj.
Yeah.
No.
This is Isra. Like, what I'm talking about is...
No, Isra wal Miraj was all physical.
Including the doors.
The whole journey was physical.
Yes.
In terms of the understanding of transitioning, because there was even a staircase.
Yeah. I've listened to Yasser Qadhi on this.
What does he say?
Yeah, because he said a few things. So he was saying that, like, some Muslims believe that the Prophet, he got to a door to a point where his physical body didn't go, but his subtle body went, like they call it Jism Latif, something like that. But then
the
he
whole
was saying
thing
that,
we say was done physically.
So then he was saying that he believes it happened physically. And he had a very long podcast on it. And this is when I was really looking into it, you know what I mean? And he was saying very, very clearly that there were doors, there was angels with a key to the door. And he was saying that some Muslims nowadays will try to interpret it from a metaphorical perspective, but he was saying, no, we Sunnis, we see it as very physical, very literal, including the doors, including the keys, including the angels. But my point is that is a contradiction.
How's it a contradiction?
Because,
you can say it's something that we don't understand, but why is it a contradiction?
It's a contradiction because the sky is not solid. The reason why the door exists was because the classical Muslims believed that the sky was solid. That's why there's a door. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a door. Why would there be a door?
Tell me what a door is.
A door is a way to get from place A to B. It's something to get to place A to B.
So then I have no issue, and you have no issue then as well.
No, but like,
because he went from A to B.
Yes, but he needed the door to open. He needed a key.
Absolutely.
The guards need to open the door. Now,
what is that key? Does that key mean permission? Does that mean that access? Is it a different realm? Wallahu alam, we don't know. But to say it's a contradiction,
I have no issue with saying it's a different realm. But I have it.
Going from place A to B, that's fine. Key, what is a key? Key is granting access from A to B. What you're doing is you're taking a very literalistic understanding that a door, if I say a door, you're picturing Monsters Inc. and these doors coming in, and then a lock, and then a key going in. We're saying Wallahu alam.
Yasser Qadhi.
Yeah, he's saying we take the Prophet's journey literally, but
he was saying including the door, including the key, because there's description.
Yeah, so even if you take the door literally, my question to him is, what do you mean door? And if he's saying A to B, no, we can take literally going from A to B. Why is it when we say door, we have to accept that it's a wooden thing with hinges and it must open? Because back in the days, it used to just be a piece of cloth. before that, it used to be something else. Doors
that's
have
fine.
always had different
That's fine,
definitions.
that's fine.
And in the future, a door might be you put your palm on something and two metal things open. Or it might be something holographic.
Yeah. But
do you see?
Robert, do you see how from my perspective, I might see when you say what's the door, I might see that as a Jordan Peterson sort of,
No,
what do you mean by believe? You know what I mean?
That would have made sense had your answer not been exactly what I was referring to.
By the way, I don't even mean...
If a door was a door, bro.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But your definition was going from A to B.
Yes.
Then key, we know, is an access from A to B.
Yes. In those days, obviously most houses didn't have doors like you're saying, they were closed, but some houses did have doors and they had keys too, because they had locksmiths and we had, blacksmiths and all that sort of thing. And when you describe it physically and literally as with a door and with a key and with guards,
I'm just thinking it's...
But do you see, do you mistake...
I'm just seeing it as something more pedantic rather than
do you
something...
think I'm being silly for interpreting it that way?
To be honest, I hear a lot of things in the park. That is not a strong argument, because for you to say a contradiction is something that's A and not A. That's a contradiction. So if you're saying that a door is going from A to B, a key is granting access, I don't have an issue.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm talking about the reason why there's a door is because the sky is solid. That's why.
No, but
otherwise,
what I'm saying is that
door.
if I open that interpretation now,
sure,
we can even. I'm not saying that this is how we should look at it.
Yeah.
I'm saying wallahu alam, but what I'm saying is even if we understand there is a barrier when we're leaving the earthly realm going into space.
Yes.
Yeah, and for that,
but we know there isn't.
No, there's different kind of protections.
Stratosphere. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
but a rocket goes straight up.
A rocket does go straight up, but there's a certain amount of strength it needs to pierce
escape the gravity.
that layer. Now that
not to pierce the layer, to escape Earth's gravity. There's no layer it needs to go through.
Yeah, no physical layer. But it depends how you're defining layer. Because even the stratosphere is defined as several layers,
the
right?
Arabic is a canopy, a solid
roof. I'm not talking about the Arabic.
Okay,
I'm talking as our understanding today. When you're studying, you're looking at geography textbooks or scientific textbooks. They say, okay, what's this stratosphere called? What's that called? Okay, for you to go from there to there, you need to go through you need a certain energy, and that's why a lot of people couldn't go to the moon. Because they had to overcome that level of energy. What I'm saying is that the Quran, like you mentioned at the beginning, the hadith is simple to understand. Now, yes, indeed, there are certain things that are mutashabihat, but those mutashabihat are not going to be referring to the essence of who God is. Yes, indeed, how God does what he does, we don't know. Now, how the Prophet went from A to B, wallahu alam. Did the Prophet go from A to B? That's the essential Aqidah point. That's something that we affirm, no problem whatsoever. How? That's something that you're going to find kalam in. That's something that you're going to find issues in.
There's no debate though. There's no debate. Well, Shia Islam says something different, but Shia Islam says that.
But here's my question: when it comes to the authenticity of the Quran and the preservation of Quran,
can you not judge?
You accept it, right?
I don't accept it fully, but can you not judge the authenticity of the Quran by the contents?
I'm saying, of course, that's one of the criteria. But when I'm speaking to somebody that doesn't accept the Quran, because you can, that is definitely one criteria.
Because I'll be honest, I would accept it genuinely. If I accepted the Quran as the word of Allah, I wouldn't even question the preservation because the Quran says it was preserved, right? That'd be enough for me. You know what I mean? I wouldn't need to go into the who cares about what this person says, that person says. Right. If the Quran says it for me, that's enough. Do you know what I mean? But obviously for me, if the content seems to suggest that it's not the word of Allah, then I have difficulty in accepting the preservation. Because if I believe in Allah, then obviously I'd believe whatever text he has, would be his word.
Just out of interest, is the issue coming from the Quranic ayah or from the hadith?
Both, obviously, in relation, because the Quranic ayah talks about...
No, let's just say we're taking one at a time.
Okay, we take the Quran at a time. The issue comes from where the hadith supplements my issue.
For now, the Quran. Do you have any issue with regards to the Quran?
Yes.
Like what?
Yes. Some of the verses which I think are direct translations of the Greek at the time, because there were knowledge routes going from India to Arabia, from Greece to India in this sort of way. The sky being a solid canopy, paired with the Isra.
So you're mentioning a few things. Let's go one at a time.
Okay, sure.
So you're saying because certain Quranic themes are similar to that of the Greek themes,
Not similar, pretty much identical. The embryological process outlined in the Quran is completely identical, word for word, the Greek from Hippocrates. And I find it difficult to believe that's a coincidence. You know what I mean? I really do, because
I looked into that. I didn't see that it's identical.
It is. The outline from the alaka to then the formation of the bones and this, and I'm not even, from an embryological perspective, you can say bone or muscle, I know some people debate that, but that's not even, I wouldn't even debate that.
Out of interest here, you believe that this was the prevalent theory of the time, right?
Of the time in Greece, 100%. Yes, 100%.
But
it was also the prevalent time of the science.
How did somebody who's unlettered, somebody that's in the desert, that barely left Arabia, how did he have access to this knowledge?
Well, when he was younger, he used to travel, right? And he used to hear
only
stories.
A few times.
Yeah.
And to assume that a child has memorized.
Oh no, I agree with that.
And that he's going to wait till the age of 40 to now formulate the prevalent theory of embryology. I think is a bit.
No. I agree. Don't worry. I agree with that. I'm talking about like other stories to do with Christian faith and that type of stuff. But when it comes to embryology, I'm with you. But when it comes to embryology, I'm with you. Obviously, he wasn't a child and hearing that.
Christian faith. What about the Christian faith?
As in, like, obviously, when at the time when he was traveling, obviously he had stories to do with Christianity, and obviously he had stories to do with like the Christian faith at that time. But that's a separate topic. That's a separate topic.
No, that is something that does get brought up. Okay. That's why I'm interested.
In what way does it?
In the same way that you're bringing up, that people believe that it's copied from the New Testament.
Oh, I don't think it's copied, because the Islamic idea of Jesus is different to the Christian idea, so it'd be silly to say that was copied. You know what I mean? But no, but I think the embryology was, and that's why I don't think the Quran. So obviously, correct me if I'm wrong. Allah, Jibreel is revealing the word of Allah to the Prophet Muhammad, correct, right? So I don't think that the revelation, the word of the Prophet and the Quran we have today, I don't think that's the same. And the reason is because if it was the same, I don't think there would be errors in it. You know what I mean? Because if I was to accept the Prophet as...
You haven't given an error, though.
I think the embryology is an error. I think the sky being a canopy and this is an error.
What about the embryology do you think is an error?
I think it's because I think it's very, very clear that the understanding of that time at that day was that a woman would bleed once a month, and when she didn't bleed, the blood was still there and it congealed and became a child with the help of a man, with the help of a nutfa, whatever you want to call it. And I think that to then say that like now. You must understand why I think we are interpreting the words of the Quran with science now. You must understand why I think that, because every Muslim at that time believed that. The classical ulama believed that. I'm forgetting his name. I have the notes. I can show you.
I'm trying to see where the mistake is. You still haven't mentioned
the mistake is that that was the understanding of the time. Oh, are you talking about the specific words of the Quran?
No, you're saying errors. There's errors in the Quran. Then you told me about embryology. You first said that it's copied from the prevalent understanding.
Yeah. I do think that.
That didn't understand it. No, we proved that it's not practical. That a young child is going.
I don't think that happened. I'm saying that I think that when the Quran was given, I don't know. I can't provide evidence for this, but I also reject the evidence that it was, the word of Allah through the Prophet. I don't think it was. What is this? But this is still in English. But even into a this sequence of events, by the way, from a clinging clock. The Greek uses the same clinging word. It uses the same word, but in the Greek language, it uses the exact same word. The one that Hippocrates used.
Why is that disproving the validity of the Quran?
It's not disproving. I'm just saying that.
Today,
I'm not disproving that. I'm not disproving that.
Is on its own orbit. We can say, the scientists today believe the sun is on its own orbit.
I'm saying that.
This verse in the Quran is talking about the big. That's talking about the universe expanding, or because there are prevalent scientific theories that the Quran seems to be talking about. Therefore, it's wrong. I don't understand that.
I'm not saying therefore it's wrong. I'm saying that it would be a massive coincidence.
Adam just can't have magic children, can he?
Do you think it's a coincidence?
I don't see how that proves that it's not from Allah. I don't.
Okay. So first thing I'm saying because obviously you take everything into account. You know what I mean, right? So with this thing, with the embryology thing, it is clearly a coincidence. As in, if I was a Muslim, I would believe that this is the word of Allah, but it's also a coincidence. Would you not say that?
No, what I'm saying that is, if something is understood by the society and it's accepted to a certain level, then there can be similarities, or God could refer to those things. For example, certain people might see mountains with pegs, and they might think, you know what? Oh, that's taken from so and so guy who came up with this theory and this. So what? If it's true, it's true. You know what I mean?
I agree. If it's true, it's true. But the cosmological model of those days is definitely not true.
No. So you're saying that what the Quran? That's why I'm trying to understand what aspect of the Quran's narrative is wrong.
Okay. So when it comes to the embryology thing, I'm saying it's a big coincidence which looks suspicious. I'm not saying that it clearly disproves it. I'm not saying that. When it comes to the sky being a canopy, and when it comes to the levels of heavens, and when it comes to the description of a shooting star and it's hitting, the purpose of it is to disrupt the jinn from coming to Earth, I think that this is a very clear error. And I'll explain why. Because I
have you experienced jinns?
I'm not saying they don't exist.
That's
not a scientific.
Can we see jinns?
No, of course not.
Can we measure them under a microscope?
Some people can, but we can't.
Can we measure them under a microscope?
Of course not.
Or using the scientific method?
I'm not saying jinns don't exist.
What I'm saying is that occurring, because we can't see jinns, we can't verify that. Yeah?
Oh yeah. Okay, for sure. Can I refine my?
Go ahead.
So what I'm saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong about the the Islamic explanation here, or the Quranites, but it's when you look at a shooting star, right? The explanation sort of given for it is that obviously, some people, they say star, but that's from a first-person perspective, so I'm not going to argue that. But we know it's a rock, and we know that it's burning up in the atmosphere of space, right? And the Quran says that when Allah is instructing, but I'm just coming to the point.
But sometimes you mention a few things, and I lose track of them.
Go for it.
When you're saying, technically a comet is this, and the Quran's use this word and that word.
I'm not.
Let me just finish the point. So. That I don't think it's fair, because not everyone's going to understand that, and the Quran is a book for all times. So the Quran will use an understanding that will be understood by that time, by the time of the people with a greater understanding, and the interpretation will be for both. Why? Because by definition, it is a book for all times.
Yes.
Now, if you're taking it as a shooting star, Now, what was your point about it being a star?
No, that wasn't my point. My point was that I'm just saying, we agree on what it is what I'm saying first of all, and then I'm saying that the in the Islamic tradition it says that the angels will come to earth to fulfill Allah's plan, and the jinns will overhear Allah talking to the angels, and then the jinns will come to earth to try and disrupt the plan, right? So these shooting stars will smite the jinns out of, stop them from fulfilling their mission, right? And now my point is that all these comets and these rocks and whatever they are, right? There's a complete naturalistic explanation for them in terms of their trajectory from where they came from to where they're going, and their movements are entirely subject to gravity.
Does it exclude the metaphysical purpose of it?
The metaphysical, but then you'd be saying that,
No, it doesn't exclude the metaphysical purpose of the comets.
Just what excluded the metaphysical purpose?
The
scientific understanding.
You're saying that we know today that's
yes.
the reason we have a naturalistic understanding. I'm saying the metaphysical understanding does the naturalistic understanding refute the metaphysical, or can they both happen at the same time?
Okay, sure. So you're asking, just clarifying, so you're asking if the metaphysical explanation that the rocks could hit the jinns out of space, and that the scientific understanding, you're asking, can they coincide? Or are you asking?
Are they compatible?
I think
the answer is yes.
Yes. I think they are, but forgive me for using this example, but I think you can't disprove the Easter Bunny with scientific language either. You know what I mean?
But the Easter
too.
Bunny, you haven't said that you believe the Easter Bunny exists. You told me you believe jinns exist.
I said I don't believe it. I said I don't reject them.
You don't reject them.
Yeah.
Do you reject the Easter Bunny? Do you reject the Easter Bunny?
Yes, because I think it doesn't make sense.
So then,
but I do reject. I reject the Islamic.
One second. So you accept that there could be such thing as jinns?
Possibly.
But you believe that there cannot be the Easter Bunny?
If I was to be, an atheist, I'd say I can't reject it. But I'm saying,
asking you though. You're not an atheist, are you?
I'm saying based off what I know, I reject it. But
so
it could.
That's not a good example, then, is it?
Okay. Okay.
Or
I see
rather,
what
it's a disanalogy.
Okay, fine. But you see why I'm making the point, right? Okay, you
Because,
know.
because with the
but-
jinns,
Yes.
you have no, you're open to the idea.
I'm saying.
And let's just say for argument's
but
sake,
I'm not
they-
open to the idea of their purpose.
One second, let me finish the point, yeah? When it comes to the jinns, if you're open to the fact that they could metaphysically exist, and you cannot see it, so by the scientific method, you can't measure that they are being attacked,
Yes.
that they are being hurt, that said thing is being done.
Yes.
Now, if you cannot measure said thing,
Yes.
then, and you're saying there is a naturalistic explanation,
Yes.
then you have to take an agnostic point of view, saying that, you know what, they could both coincide.
Okay.
I just don't know that,
Okay.
but I'm open to that.
Okay,
That's
okay.
why I'm confused to see why you're rejecting that.
Okay, because
Or
I
if
see.
you're even
I know,
rejecting that.
because I see like you're positing it in a sort of scientific manner, and you're trying to say that the purpose of the rock can be to
You
hit
posited
the jinn.
it as a scientific manner when you said we know from a naturalistic point of view.
Yeah, I'm saying we know the explanation of it from a naturalistic
Scientific
point of view. Yeah.
explanation.
But I'm
So you
saying
brought that in.
that there's no divine hand in the trajectory of the rock.
How do you know?
How do I know? Because we know where the rocks came from. We know how they were formed.
So just
But
because you
take
know,
it back to,
just because you know where something comes from means
Yes.
you know who created it or who has.
I'm not saying that.
Do you see?
Yeah, but I'm not saying. But the rock didn't come from heaven. It didn't come from Allah to hit the jinn.
It doesn't have to. That's why I made that distinction at the beginning
Yes.
between mechanisms
Sure.
and creator of mechanisms.
Yeah.
God has created mechanisms and God is a creator of mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say there is a naturalistic purpose of what comets do. Does that exclude the metaphysical purpose as well? The answer is I don't know. If somebody
first we need to
one
accept-
second.
yeah.
If somebody accepts the premise of the Quran being from God, then it follows that you will accept that metaphysical understanding.
Yeah,
Simple as that.
But first, you need to accept that a rock has a metaphysical purpose.
That's why I'm saying the metaphysical purpose is going to be informed to you by who? We're back to full circle again.
If it's
from
true.
Scripture and
Yeah,
God.
Yeah. But
So that's why that has to be at the beginning.
Is this not a circular argument, though?
No, it's only a circular argument because you told me at the beginning that you believe the Islamic concept of God. You have no issue believing in the Quran. The Prophet
From the
we didn't
Quranic
touch.
perspective.
Yeah. So that's why at the beginning I didn't emphasize too much on that. Otherwise, that's where the conversation should have started from.
Sure.
Do you
sure.
believe a God?
Sure.
Do you believe that there's one God?
Sure,
Do you
sure.
believe there's Prophet and the Quran? Because that then informs everything else.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't done circular from design, it was done because you accepted the premises at the beginning that
Right.
you believe that there's an independent existence. And I would posit that if you accept there's an independent existence, then and you believe it to be all wise and knowledgeable, then the inference to the best explanation is revelation does make sense, prophethood does make sense, Islam has the best case when you look at the inference to the best explanation, and as a result, the claims of Islam follow.
Yes, but sure. Do you think that nowadays, compared to let's say even just 500 years ago, the understanding of the naturalistic claims of the Quran, which there are many, are completely different now to how they were before? I'm not saying that's an issue for Islam. What I'm saying is that it's an issue in a way.
I'm saying the interpretation of them have varied based upon the current understanding of science.
Yeah, but when you say interpretation, I'm talking about very specific ayats which are clear in what it's talking about. You know what I mean? The Quran wasn't supposed to be a complicated document like you're saying. It's supposed to be someone for the layman, for all of us to understand, for all of us to realize our purpose and get closer to Allah.
And 1 second, and I've studied this,
Yeah.
and I actually went through and I documented this, and it was a painstaking task. I sat down
Go for it.
and I looked at I had to write down, my teacher told me to write down the scientific verses.
Yeah.
And with the scientific verses were not, and they are not mentioned in Quran by isolation, and you can check this yourself. The scientific verses then inform a lesson. And it is that lesson that informs, and it is what God is trying to tell us.
Sure.
So that scientific, quote unquote, scientific verse informs us something about the Day of Judgment, something about Allah, something about, about what Allah does, the Day of Judgment, etc., etc. So it is not that which is being taught to us. That, like I said, is open to interpretation, but it does not have narrative changing implications. That has its own purpose. For the laity, they can read those verses but also benefit from what those verses come with. i.e. the lesson that comes with it,
Yeah.
about Allah, about the Day of Judgment, about whatever Allah is trying to teach us. So you would be correct.
Sure.
If those verses were coming in isolation, it would be a concern, because what is the purpose of them?
Sure.
Why are they randomly being given if they can be interpreted this way, that way? It would make sense. But taking this on board
Taking
and
everything into
understanding that the scientific, quote unquote scientific verses are secondary and supporting the primary lesson giving, that's the main point.
Sure. Okay. So, as in, I agree that the Quran's not supposed to be a book of science. It's supposed to be a book to, take one person towards Allah. Before, because I'd like to go to a more interesting topic of spirituality rather than science. But you do agree that everything, almost all of the scientific miracles that Muslims were using to prove the Quran, they're no longer applicable, right? I've heard many people say this. As in, I'm just asking just for an honest thing.
Give me an example of a scientific miracle.
In terms of the water, the seas not the water not mixing from one to another.
Then we do have an example of the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean not mixing.
But Muhammad Ajab says that's not what the Quran's talking about.
No.
He says it's talking about the landmass in between.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But what I'm saying
And
is,
it does the salty water and sweet water, they do mix. You know what I mean?
when we look at, there is a barrier that's presenting, that's stopping
I've
them.
seen the picture. Yeah.
Now, even if a person says, even scientifically, when you're distilling 2 layers of liquid, but technically speaking, if we look on a molecular level, it hasn't technically split. No, but from the outside observational point of view, there is a clear distinction between the oil level and the water.
Evidently so.
They have split.
Evidently so.
Now, he's correct, and of course, to say that ayah is based upon the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, that's incorrect. To say that is the only explanation of it.
No, but he was saying that it's not talking about 2 water bodies. He was saying it's talking about a landmass separating 2 water bodies.
So that's the point that I'm getting to.
Okay.
Which is that some people are interpreting it as the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. Some people are taking it as landmass, blah, 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 blah.
But he was saying it like...
What I'm saying is, let me finish the point, isn't it? What I'm saying is that it's an interpretation, and certain people will be wrong in their interpretation. I'll give you an example. Certain people that are saying the earth is flat, that's the interpretation. And it's in a hadith, in a explanation, like Ibn Hazm or whoever it may be. People that don't follow the opinion, bro, they will say that's wrong. But again, it's not something that the Quran is saying explicitly. It's an interpretation of what it could mean. But my point...
But I'm saying people were saying that this is how it interprets, but you're saying that's not true.
But I haven't negated that point.
You're saying it's an interpretation.
So you're missing my point.
Sure.
What I'm saying is there's a difference between the essence of the text, and an interpretation of the text. Now, what hijab is giving you an example of is a completely different way to what the old understanding of those verses can be taken as.
Sure.
Do you see? So that's not an issue when it comes to the verses of the Quran. There are issues pertaining the interpretation of the meaning of the Quran.
Sure.
Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So that's what he's referring to, and that's something we have no issues with.
Okay.
People were believing that before it was alaq, a cloth. Whilst afterwards they said no, a clinging substance. So there is there an issue pertaining the Arabic per se? No. It's pertaining what people picked. There's a list. They picked that particular word, they put it in the translation. So it was that picking that people have an issue with.
Sure.
Not the native Arabic, not the native revelation of Allah, which is primarily in the Arabic language. That's where the crux of the argument is. Not with regards to the interpretation or the English choice of translation.
Sure. Okay. Sure. So when it comes to, in terms of like spirituality and stuff, do you believe it's possible to, get closer and closer to Allah, and like, let's say the Prophet, peace be upon him, did muraqabah, right? It's an Arabic word for sort of meditation, and the whole Sufi tradition, obviously, there are Sunni Sufis, there are Sufi Sufis, there are Shia Sufis, different types of Sufis identify themselves in different ways. I'm not talking about the grave worshipping people, I'm talking about like the Sufis who do the 5 pillars, but they also meditate a lot, and they see that as a path towards gnosis of Allah. Is this something which is completely seen as like shirk and blasphemy, or is this something which is okay and acceptable?
By the way, evolution, the Subur Ahmed, do you know Subur Ahmed?
Yeah.
He's here today in case you want to speak to him on evolution after our discussion. I just spotted him and I thought if you're interested, after our discussion, you can speak to him. So when it comes to spirituality in Islam has existed. Like you mentioned, the Prophet would go to the cave of Hira, he would meditate, and cleansing of the heart. We have copious books written by Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Jawzi, Imam Abu Yusuf. There's books on Imam Ghazali. There's a lot of people that have...
Imam Ghazali in Arabi went into detail in these things.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
so spirituality does exist.
Yes.
And it is an integral part of a person getting close to God, like spiritual purification. It's something that is pointed towards even in the Quran when Allah talks about nafsul mutma'inna, and talks about looking, and we're told in the literature to look within yourself. So looking within yourself means exactly that. That you're pondering over the creation of Allah, you're purifying yourself spiritually, and different people have taken different journeys pertaining that.
Yeah, for sure. And is it possible from a Sunni Islamic perspective, this idea of gnosis of Allah? It's not. I'm not talking about like thinking and knowing Allah in that sort of way. I'm talking.
When you say gnosis, what do you mean?
I mean a perception of. Let's start with the beforehand. Do you believe it's possible to perceive the unseen?
Unseen meaning the unseen realm. It's possible, yes.
Okay, sure. And because obviously there are many spiritual traditions around the planet that prioritize meditation as a method and a tool to get towards whatever truth is, right? We can define that as Allah, right? Lots of these different traditions have been very successful in terms of they produce many beings who have attained to this sort of knowledge. And interestingly, cross-culturally, they have nothing to disagree on. You know what I mean? I would say that is evidence of their truth in some way. And the issue that I find is that these people come from very different traditions, and there are Muslims, there are non-Muslims who have done this, there are Muslims who have done this, there are Muslims from different backgrounds who have done this. You know what I mean? And I think that because to be very honest with you, the issue that I have with Islam is, first of all, fundamentally, the only thing I care about is my journey towards Allah in this world. All I care about, don't care about anything else. It's just truth. That's it for me. And I genuinely think that if you're a Muslim and if you genuinely bow down to Allah in sajda, if you genuinely lay down all your bullshit in front of Him, if you lay down everything, surrender everything, I do believe it's possible to make it in a second like that. I do think so.
This is what the hadith supports as well, that if you call, and this is what certain da'is will have told to you and hopefully will tell you, and I'm telling you that this is something that you do have a untethered connection with God.
Sure.
And that's something that you can communicate with Him and you can ask Him for guidance. And, if you're sincere, Allah will guide you.
Yeah. And I've spoken to, I don't know, have you heard of Sheikh Suhaib?
Suhaib Webb.
Well, I don't know if that's... He's this guy in Glasgow. He's quite well known. He's a Sunni guy, very knowledgeable guy. I've spoken to quite a few people about my sort of experiences and stuff, and I didn't actually know this before, but a Muslim teacher was telling me that apparently if you have a dream of the Prophet, that can only come from Allah, from Islamic.
But bro, all of these things, rather than turning into a circular argument, all of them rely and are predicated on the fact that, do you believe that there is a God?
Yes.
Do you believe that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was a prophet and messenger?
Yeah.
And do you believe in the Quran? That's where most of your attention should be focused, because that will then inform the spirituality.
Okay.
The spirituality makes sense, whether you want to...
Is it not possible to have that spiritual union with Allah if you're not Muslim? Is that not possible?
If you are not accepting of what Allah has revealed, then that potential of spirituality cannot be reached. Because the preconditions of that is belief in Him, His Prophet, His book.
But what if someone's heart is pure and they're genuinely searching and they've looked into Islam and they don't think it's true, but they're still searching for Allah? They're not trying to,
That's their journey, but they should focus more on the fact that they continue on that aspect of things, but they really hone in on the fact that, what are my issues? Let me note them down, find out the people that are experts in the field and go and sit with them. Yeah. So if you, with the Isra wal Mi'raj, I thought the answer was very clear. It's very to the point.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you have to agree with me.
Yeah, for
Do you
sure.
see?
For sure.
That doesn't mean that what I said, we were speaking on a similar level. Maybe I was speaking past you. Maybe you were speaking past me. It doesn't mean that that's the be all and end all. It just means that you now need to refer to somebody else that maybe speaks more on your level, that maybe can answer your things more to the point. Maybe it's possible. So here's the thing. You are only, bro. What did you say your name is?
Vasu.
Yeah. Vasu, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Yeah.
True.
The spiritual aspect is there, but at the end of the day, it's going to put pressure on the fact that I don't really believe in the Quran, and a lot of things are predicated on the Quran, like how our zuhud is done, spirituality is done. It's predicated primarily from the Quran.
Yes.
Without the Quran, we have nothing.
Yeah.
The Quran is absolutely fundamental.
Yes.
And then the hadith, of course, informs that.
Yeah.
Then we have ijma' and qiyas, and we've got the whole tradition. But the point that I'm saying is, don't underestimate this point in particular. Let's just say you haven't got the answer that you wanted from myself. That's not the end of the story. Note it down, go to somebody else.
Yeah.
They may be able to articulate it better than me. So with spirituality, I say the same thing. The spirituality is predicated on you emptying yourself and filling yourself with the divine energy.
Yeah.
And now the only way you can do that is if you know what you believe about the divine and how it was done via the Prophet. Because a lot of people that have taken tasawwuf, spirituality, have divorced themselves from the tradition.
I agree.
And because of that, they have gone astray.
Yeah.
So that's a very similar example of what I would say to you, that if you take spirituality in isolation, the same will happen to you. You will go astray as well. Because spirituality...
That's if Islam is true.
That's like you taking a wild horse, and trying to tame it, without having... the correct means to do so. You're going to hurt yourself. And you might even, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I suppose that my issue is that, like, if you were talking to a Christian guy and he was like and he was defending his metaphysical claims by saying that science doesn't, touch that aspect, you would look at him and be like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And you probably would, you know what I mean?
I agree with you, and I know what you're
do you think I'm being honest? Like, as in, like, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I'm going where you're leading me in the conversation because I don't want to bring up criteria that you haven't asked for. Okay. That's why I've gone with you.
I'm going by the Quranic.
But that's why I'm saying you're dictating the criteria. But if you're now making a correlation between Islam and Christianity...
I'm not making a correlation.
Let's say you are, Not saying you are, but let's just say implicitly you're saying that, that would mean that you and, say, a Christian would be very similar. I would say I disagree with that. Why? Because in any other metric... Because you've given me the Quran as a metric. You take any other metric, the Quran is head and shoulders above the rest. You take manuscript evidence. You take stematics and orthography. The Quran is still leading. You go to the isnad and the preservation of hadith. The Quran is in the lead. You look at the correlation in terms of meanings, in terms of history, in terms of even primary evidence backing up prophecies that the Prophet has made in the Quran. All of those things I'm saying the Quran and Muslims can do, but the Christians cannot do. When it comes to the prophecies, when it comes to contradictions, when it comes to preservation. All of these things, the Quran is, the Muslims are immaculate when it comes to these things. There's simply no comparison between us and Christianity.
The thing is, obviously, like, I'm going to interpret Islam as an independent source, you know what I mean? I have no need to compare it to Christianity. I'm talking about in terms of if you were talking to any human and they were defending metaphysical claims, because, by the way, when you go to the beginning, when you accept Allah, the Quran and the prophets, then I understand why you would accept everything that comes from that, obviously, because if you believe the Quran is the word of Allah, then everything that comes from that you would accept. But for someone who doesn't accept that, it makes sense for them to not start there, to read the Quran, to try and make sense of it, and to try and then make sense, because obviously the Hadith explains some of the ayats, to try and make sense of that. And then when they see those, when they see like clear issues, and then they come to someone, and then a person of knowledge says to them that, like, there's a door, but it's a transfer from one realm to another, but then it's obviously in the context of the sky is solid. You can see how, from my perspective, it looks very problematic.
The reason why I wouldn't say that is because
do you understand?
Because even when I asked you what a door is, your first go-to explanation was to get from A to B.
I don't disagree with that.
Now, if it was that you couldn't understand anything other than a wooden door, then you could make the argument and say, you know what? There is only one definition. There is only one understanding.
Yeah.
But when it comes to do you believe in God? And Jordan Peterson go, what do you mean by do?
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a door, we know that when it comes to these sorts of discussions, it is A to B. You're dealing with people in a desert. You're dealing with mothers. You're dealing with people that are working from morning to evening. Mm-hmm. There is a degree of understanding. There is a language that has to be understood by everybody. But the laity, if you ask somebody, is there a door in the sky? They're going to say no. I don't believe there is a physical door like we understand it today.
I know.
There is going from A to B, then obviously that's different. Yeah. But do you have to go or something?
Oh no. We're probably just going around in circles, innit? But I mean, it was a good conversation, man. Like, it's very interesting. But just out of interest, do you think that I'm like being purposely deceptive? Because obviously, like, you must
I don't think you're being deceptive.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that maybe you've understood it in a certain way and you want the thing to be answered in that particular way. Now, I would say just open that up a little bit. I could be wrong, but that's how I'm seeing it. I don't think you're being deceptive deliberately, because I don't think I've got enough data to make that conclusion.
Sure.
Yeah, to conclude that you're a deceptive person.
Yeah.
Maybe you've come with that agenda, wallahu alam, I don't know. But I've answered you based upon the energy you've given me.
Yeah.
Maybe it needs to be addressed in a different way, that maybe another brother in the park, like the sister saying, maybe you go around and maybe somebody else might be able to give you from a different perspective.
Okay.
Yeah?
Fair enough. I understand your point.
But from
obviously I disagree, but it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, and that's fine, like I said, because of your perspective, and you're looking for a certain criteria.
Honestly, I'm not.
Answered.
I think that you're trying to talk about it in a certain criteria. I think I'm looking at it for the way it is. I think I'm looking at it for the way it's been explained
the way
by
you're
the text
looking at
itself.
it then is in a physical, modernistic understanding of when door is mentioned, it's something on hinges that's wooden, and that's a physical key, because even key is used even when it comes to computing.
Yeah.
No guy in their right mind will believe it's a
physical key.
It's a physical key.
For sure, yeah.
But yet we believe that there are keys on programmers
keys
use
to different dimensions of existence. But I mean, I'm talking about the door in context to the solid sky. That's what I'm talking about. You understand what I'm saying? But obviously you're saying that the sky is not solid, but there is a door. And obviously, you know, we're obviously speaking past each other. So yeah. But listen, take care of yourself, yeah?
What was your name?
Vasu.
Nice meeting you, brother.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
Just take the microphone, yeah?
Oh yeah, go for it. All right. I would have forgotten.
And have a good day today.
You too, man.
If you want to have another convo, or maybe before you leave, just let me know how your day went, who you spoke to. But Subur might be a good discussion for you in terms of evolution.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I know he's quite well versed in evolution.
Yeah, he knows this thing.
Yeah, but take care of yourself, man.
Easy, yeah?
Take care.